You know, there's a really challenging issue that a lot of people struggle with, and that's called post-traumatic stress. This is a situation where there's been one or many extremely stressful experiences, either over a long period of time, such as being raised in a home with substance abuse, or being in the military and being under threat of attack for years or months on end, to single time extreme experiences like a car accident or being raped or being mugged. And these are situations that, for a variety of reasons, get stuck in our minds and then can cause all sorts of unwanted symptoms, such as flashbacks, constant anxiety, nightmares, intrusive thoughts, and being triggered emotionally by a whole host of environmental factors. And this is something that is commonly seen as something you just have to cope with. And many people in the psychotherapy field are trained to teach their clients to simply cope with it, manage it, and hope that over time it gets a little better. Well, I think that is a very disempowering mindset. And I've found, working with many clients over the years as a hypnotist, that trauma can be resolved completely, and that trauma, in a way, is unconsciously self-inflicted. Now, I know that's a controversial statement, because we like to, in our society, look at people who have experienced traumatic incidents and label them as victims, and to feel sorry for them. The problem with that is that if someone is in a victim mentality, they, by definition, are disempowered. They're putting the responsibility on someone else for causing it and really for fixing it. But if you believe that it's something that cannot be fixed, then there's no hope. So what I have learned is that when someone is traumatized, it's not the event itself, but somehow the way that person perceives of that event, including the way they remember it. And so when I say trauma is unconsciously self-inflicted, I mean that there's something that someone who is traumatized does to themselves without realizing it, automatically, unconsciously, that actually creates the trauma. And that is what causes the post-traumatic stress and that all those other symptoms that come from it. Now, sometimes people who are grappling with trauma and they have not been able to resolve it experience a whole host of secondary issues like substance abuse or relationship problems or financial catastrophe. And this is all due to the inability to manage their own mind in the wake of that kind of traumatic experience. But we look no further than a military situation where we may have two people who witness the same tragic event, we might say. Let's just say we have two soldiers and they both witness a comrade getting shot down, even brutally or in a very bloody way. One of those may very well look back at that experience and remember it as just being a really stressful, bad day and a really unfortunate experience, but he moves on. But someone else may find that it was so traumatizing to him that the only way he can cope with it is by drinking. Sometimes that leads to suicide, which is really the ultimate trauma and tragedy. Real quickly, I tell you, I had a client many years ago who was a firefighter, and he came to me with the issue with alcohol abuse, and he had tried even working with a hypnotist, and that only was moderately successful, but he had tried all of the inpatient rehab and psychotherapy and medication and AA and all of those different things, and none of them really worked because they were only dealing with the symptom. The alcohol abuse is a behavioral symptom. What was underlying that was some degree of emotional stress, anxiety, grief, that whole complex of what happened, because 10 years before, he rescued someone from a burning house and the person died in his arms as he got out to the guy's front yard. And it was the memory of that, of the person he rescued, or almost rescued. It was the memory of that person's face, the sound he made, how he looked as he died, that literally burned itself into this firefighter's memory. And the only way he could deal with that anxiety and keep it at bay was to drink. Unfortunately, people maintain compulsive behaviors and addictions because they work. And so he was drinking because it worked. Unfortunately, it nearly ruined his career. It affected his marriage. It affected his health. When he came to me, and he had been an alcoholic for nearly 10 years, we discussed this, and I said, the real problem is not the alcohol. The real problem is not even the anxiety. The real problem is the memory, the way you remember it. So with a very simple, profound technique, we actually, in the span of probably 20 or 30 minutes, changed how he remembered that experience, so that where at first he thought about it and tears were coming down, after 15, 20 minutes of doing it, he could not even feel that memory anymore. In fact, even at the end of the session, he even had trouble remembering what had happened in terms of imagery. He still knew what happened, but it didn't bother him anymore. Then with a few more sessions working on the behavior, he was able to quit drinking easily and for good. And that was several years ago, and last time I talked with him, probably about 6 months ago, he was still doing great, and he had gotten his position back as a firefighter in the field. So it's important to realize that trauma is not what happens, but how we remember it and how we perceive and what we've learned as a result of that experience. Very often the belief is simply, I'm not safe, which can cause anxiety just by that belief alone. When the belief has changed, when the mental perspective has changed in terms of images, thoughts, feelings, when that has changed, the behavioral compensations change, the post-traumatic stress goes away, problem solved. So, if someone inflicts trauma on themselves unconsciously, that means we need to work at the unconscious or subconscious level to resolve it. That's what we do as hypnotists, and that is the key to resolving trauma. I see it nearly every week, and if you have a trauma, you have the responsibility and the duty to yourself to free yourself from it, unlearn that traumatic experience and the habits that have come from it, and free yourself to live the life that is most fulfilling for you. I'm Todd Goodwin, and I hope this message has inspired you to take back control of your mind.